This program was made possible by the generous support of the Lilly Endowment, the American Express Foundation, the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, and the Chevron Corporation. Serving on the governing board of a nonprofit organization brings many rewards. As board members, our actions and decisions can make a difference in our society. But as board members, we also face challenges. We're expected to be leaders, planners, fundraisers, even visionaries. We're expected to commit to serious responsibilities as individuals and as a group. Clarifying these responsibilities and expectations is what this program is all about. Hello, I'm Ray Suarez. As someone who's served on many boards, I'm aware of the unique challenges of board service. While staff and volunteers handle day-to-day management and delivery of services, the board governs. Governing means staying focused on 4 critical areas that we'll address in this video: defining and supporting the mission of the organization, overseeing and monitoring both internal structure and external programs, working to ensure that the organization has adequate resources, and making connections to the community at large. There is no one model for how a nonprofit board should operate. As the organization develops, the board's role and style of operation may change along with it. So instead of formulas for success, we board members must rely on principles developed over time and seasoned by experience. In this program, we'll hear from both experts in the field and board members from a variety of governing boards, both here in the studio and in interviews and stories we've gathered from throughout the country. We'll hear how board members are meeting the challenges of governing not just for the present, but also for the future. It's important to distinguish between 2 types of board responsibilities, individual and group. Individual responsibilities include attending meetings, making a financial contribution, or serving on a committee. Group responsibilities are activities such as evaluating the chief executive, approving the annual audit, planning and evaluating programs. Of course, there are many ways to discuss the board's responsibilities. In this video, we focus primarily on collective responsibilities as they relate to 4 key areas: mission, resources, outreach, and oversight. Let's start by examining the board's relationship to the heart of every nonprofit, its mission.
Every board has to first determine what is our mission. What are we here to do? What are we expected to perform? And then the board, having determined its mission, has to have a plan every year as to what very specifically it's doing to achieve that mission.
All institutions that intend to remain viable have to have a vision, and that vision has to be created by the leadership of the organization, and then that vision has to be put into concrete objectives.
It lends coherence to our decision-making, to our action. It allows us to grow, which is always tumultuous, but to do so in a way that is constructive, furthers the well-being of the school and the community that we care so much about.
To be successful, a nonprofit organization must be clear about its mission. A mission statement should be written, but it doesn't need to be elaborate. It should state simply and vividly why your organization exists. Of course, your mission may change over time as you respond to the changing needs of the community you serve. One of the board's key roles is revisiting the mission statement on a regular basis, ensuring that the organization's programs and plans flow from the mission. To help us examine the role of the board in defining the mission, we've interviewed Kay Sprinkle Grace, author of Beyond Fundraising and faculty member of the Fundraising School. As a consultant in organizational development, she's worked with dozens of boards across the country.
I want to talk to you a little bit about defining the mission. And what is the board's role in defining and redefining the mission of an organization?
I think there's a tendency that people think, well, we started this organization, we have a mission, and now we just go forward forever with the same mission. And I think one of the most energizing things that a board can do is to annually take a look at the mission. Say, is this still what we want to do in order to achieve what it is we set out to do when we started this organization? I often feel that one of the most dangerous things that happens in organizations is they replace their windows with mirrors. And they just keep looking at themselves and saying, aren't we wonderful? Yes, we have the best mission in town. Yes, we have this, this, and this. Meanwhile, the world outside their windows is changing, and they're not changing with it. So I think that when that annual plan is reviewed, it's very important to also take a look at the mission. And what is absolutely at the core of this is the whole issue of values. Because a mission statement embodies values. And all of philanthropy is driven by values. You know, I don't give to, ask for, join, or serve any organization whose values you don't share. You might give to them once, spontaneously, but you don't continue the relationship. The mission is what ignites people's imagination about a need that can be met in the community, a problem that can be solved, an enhancement that can be created, which reflects their values. And what organizations do through their board members who are very close to the mission, close to the values, what they then go out in the community and do is speak with excitement about the results. We are promoting art education. We have these results to show you. And what happens is a wonderful thing in that the board member then finds himself or herself also feeling renewed about the mission because they're focusing on results, not on needs. So there's no apology.
Now you bring me to a good point because I was going to ask you about fundraising and mission. And if you're talking about the need-based mission, it seems like that would make it much easier for a board member to go out and fundraise if they have a grasp of that. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it is so much easier because I haven't come there with the tin cup. Instead, I have come there with an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for someone to invest in an organization that is making this a stronger community. I really believe that nonprofit organizations are vehicles. They are vehicles whereby you and I can invest in an organization that is accomplishing something that is important to our community. And therefore, the orchestra, the school, the shelter, whatever it is a vehicle for me to make an investment in a stronger community.
I'm wondering also about if you could explain for us the relationship between mission and planning and how the two are linked together from a board perspective.
The mission, as a statement of the need that an organization is meeting, defines the purpose of the organization. Because if the need didn't exist, then the organization shouldn't exist. The planning falls out of the identified strategies to meet that need. So the relationship is keen.
Where do you see the staff coming into play, and what is its relationship to the board when it comes to defining and redefining the mission?
If you are willing to forge partnerships, really working partnerships between board and staff, what you can construct is a very healthy mixture of input on the mission, where the board, with its view as community members, bringing in the needs of the community, validating the mission from that standpoint, the staff then has a wonderful way of revalidating that mission through the work that it does. Because if we measure the effectiveness of the mission by the results, it is the staff that really produces those results. It is the staff of an organization that provides shelter for battered women. It is the staff of an organization that sees to it that an orchestra shows up to give a concert. So it comes down to the importance of partnerships, I believe, and the partnership between board and staff is essential.
Well, I really appreciate your being with us.
It's been great.
In any nonprofit institution, the buck stops with the board. The board's governance responsibilities include the important area of oversight, providing checks and balances to the power of management. This ensures that the organization is well run and that its mission gets carried out. Oversight touches on many things, In addition to a board's ethical and fiduciary responsibilities, board oversight directly affects the board's relationship with staff, particularly the executive director. We put together a panel of experienced participants in board service to discuss this topic.
More than ever before, the actions and activities of nonprofit institutions and their board members are under scrutiny. Some boards have failed in very public ways to provide good accountability and oversight. This has put more pressure on all nonprofits. How can board members play an active role in this area?
Well, first of all, and very basically, board members need to attend meetings, to be attentive, to read materials, and to ask good questions. And among the toughest questions are the how do we know questions. Mm-hmm. How do we know we're achieving the goals we've set out to for ourselves and for our organization? And I would add, too, to make sure that as a board member you understand the financial statements and information.
Very important. While maintaining the awareness and sensitivity to public opinion, what can be done to create a climate of openness, goodwill, and good practices, especially when it involves the organization's finances, Mark?
I think the answer to that question is in the question, and boards need to be open. They need to discuss issues. They need to ask questions. They need to share information with each other and with the chief executive openly and to build trust. There are still boards in the nonprofit sector that don't know what their CEOs are compensated, that don't ask questions about the finances. The best place to start is by asking questions, being honest and open.
The issue of conflict of interest is a really important issue in many boardrooms. How important is it that a board have a clear conflict of interest policy, Ramona?
It's very important, and yet it is not as simple as it may appear, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, because we serve on boards as volunteers because we have a profound interest, if not a stake, in the success of the mission of that not-for-profit organization. Very often we work in similar fields. We have similar services to offer. We have a position on it, if not a mission to accomplish. And so you don't want to penalize the very people who would bring the most to your operation by saying up front, if you have any interest in any of the resources that flow or any of the policies that may come out of this, then you're not welcome. But at the same time, it is very important that if one does have an actual vested interest that will accrue to them financially or in other significant terms with respect to positioning on policy, that you recuse yourself from those discussions. Your colleagues will already know how you feel, true enough, but you should not take part in that actual vote.
After hiring an executive, boards are often challenged to do good, constructive evaluations. How important is it that the board evaluate the executive director?
It's very important, and I like to look at it as a learning experience for both the director and the board. Here are partners on a mission who have set some goals in line with their vision. How well have we worked together to achieve those? And what is it that the staff director, the paid director, the person who's responsible on the ground every day for the execution of these plans, how well has that person been able to function? What kind of cooperation has she had? And what are the areas that in this next period, looking forward, we should do differently, do better? Presumably, it's all positive. It's a partnership, doing an assessment primarily to see what we have learned.
And we don't often tie evaluation to learning, but that's really what the process
Well, that's
should
the only
achieve.
point, as far as I'm concerned. You know, if it's that bad that it's got to be punitive, you probably need another person.
That's right.
You know, the important thing is not to tie evaluation to foraging. Lots of boards get to that point in the year where they want to evaluate the CEO, and they don't really know what they want to evaluate. So they forage about. It's unfair to the CEO. It's uncomfortable. What the board needs to do is turn its attention back to its strategic plan, what they set out in advance that they wanted to accomplish. Did the CEO do it? So it's clear up front what you're going to be evaluated on, and then you are evaluated on that.
Well, what are the key areas to consider when evaluating the CEO? You've mentioned a couple of them, Mark. Are there other things you'd like to add to the list?
It depends upon what the board has spoken as to what's important for the CEO. They should establish up front, for example, what is it about the financials that are going to be evaluated and that are critical to the CEO's success. Then the CEO knows what has to be done in the period of time that leads up to an evaluation. I think that's very important.
Yeah. The CEO is not a mind reader.
Yeah.
What about the board's own evaluation? Alice, I know you have a lot of strong opinions on the subject of board evaluation.
Well, it's very important, and I think it should occur as an ongoing process in addition to a special board self-assessment that would occur every couple of years. As an ongoing process, this really can be handled by what we might call a committee on trustees, really a traditional nominating committee but with a more expanded scope to consider year-round what the board's role is in helping to advance the organization, what's expected of board members, to actually evaluate each board member's involvement and participation, to make sure that everyone is actively engaged, and to have a conversation with board members who are not so that they can really bring their full value to the table. This committee also can think about what skills, qualities, relationships do we need on this board to best allow us to achieve what we're trying to accomplish. And this is, as I mentioned, a year-round process. Then every couple of years to perhaps have a retreat and step back and really think as an entire board and spend a few hours really considering how are we doing as a board, how can we function even more effectively, and how do we want to move forward in the future. It's often helpful to have an outside facilitator for this process to have the objectivity and the facilitation I think is much smoother and more valuable, more useful of a process.
Well, if board work is important, it's important that the board do it well. For those of you watching who would like more detailed information on these topics, please browse the website for our extensive print and video library. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
One of the most important areas where board members can make an impact is in bringing financial resources to the organization. This is also one of the most challenging responsibilities in board service.
It seems to me that board members, whatever their personal means are, all need to feel a commitment in one way or another to the financial support of the institutions for which they're acting as directors or trustees.
You have to begin to make connections because people give money to people. They don't give money to causes, has been my experience.
And we're concentrating reallocated human or financial resources to deliver the critical services that is central to our mission. I think we are hopefully in a position to project an image that we know what we're doing, we thought through, we're not going to waste the money you're willing to give to us. So I think it's a very central piece of the funding effort.
Raising money can make board members uncomfortable, but asking for money on behalf of your organization is one reason you serve on the board. Because financial resources are such a key concern for many nonprofit organizations, we've highlighted resources as an important area of board responsibility. Of course, fundraising is not the only resource that a board should be concerned with. Boards need to be thoughtful and strategic about attracting and recruiting board members with specific skills. For example, do your board members have talents in marketing, strategic planning, or financial management? The value of having these resources on the board shouldn't be overlooked and needs to be carefully cultivated. But for many organizations, the board's most important contribution to resource development is in the area of fundraising. To learn more about ensuring adequate resources, our field correspondent spoke earlier with Skip Rhodes, Vice President of Corporate Giving at Chevron Corporation, about the need for 100% participation on the part of every board member, from his perspective as a funder and a board member.
First, as a funder, putting on my Chevron hat, we like to see that there is broad support for the organization that is coming to ask us for money. And one of those is, what is the participation of the board? And from our perspective, if we don't get the response that we have 100% board membership that has contributed to this campaign or this project, then we think, that's a little different. That's a warning sign to us. Then on putting on my hat when I've been on the opposite side as a board member going out to fundraise. I think it means a lot to a funder to say, I'm a board member, 100% of us are behind this project, we put our own money into it, and we are also out here on our own time volunteering to raise money because we're committed to the organization and to this project.
Do you participate in every fundraising effort of the organizations that you're involved with, and
Yes.
why?
Yes. First off, I limit myself to going on boards or advisory councils that I can truly participate in. I don't feel it's appropriate, at least for me, to just lend my name. Don't mean that much anyway, but I think what you're looking for on board is really to come to the board, to fully participate, and that includes the financial activities. And so to that extent, if there is an annual giving program, I support that. If there's a capital campaign or some project campaign, yes, I'll participate to the best I can in those. Because I think it's a duty of a board member. And as a funder, that's one of the first things I find that can be a really good insight into how well is this group working, how supportive is their board, and can they go out to the community and say, we really have a solid, supportive organization from top to bottom.
Everybody has a fundraising war story. Can you share one with us?
Well, I think the first thing I learned, first time I ever fundraised, and it was for our boys' school. And I was asked to do this, and I had not yet made my own commitment to that campaign. And the first time out, this person that I was asking sitting in their living room one evening, and they said, by the way, Skip, how much have you contributed? You know, it was all downhill from there. Basically, this was a very, very savvy person who had been through many of these asks before, and he said to me, once you've made your commitment, then come on back. And it taught me a really fine lesson. You've got to be on board. You have to know that you've done this. You have to know that your other board members are fully committed. Fundraising is very, very intensive. It's strategic, and you have to be innovative, because I think you have to realize what their needs are and what your needs are. And as I like to say when I put on my Chevron hat when I'm being asked, we've got needs, you've got needs. Now, if we can agree to that, let's roll up our sleeves and make a deal.
As nonprofit board members, we certainly have a responsibility to raise money, but our job doesn't end there. Part of our work involves stewardship, that is, managing those resources well. To get a perspective on the board's role in this area, we've interviewed Jan Masaoka, Executive Director of the Support Center for Nonprofit Management and an experienced nonprofit board member and organizational consultant.
What is this term, fiduciary responsibility? What does that really mean for board members?
Fiduciary has such an old-fashioned sound to it. Or, you know, whenever in the newspaper there's an article about a nonprofit that's had a big financial scandal or has had a lot of trouble financially, everybody asks, you know, what did the board know? Why didn't the board do anything? Sometimes I ask board members, if you had $100,000 of your own money invested in a company, I think you would go to meetings, pay attention, make sure that things are square and straight, and that they're really growing and succeeding at the business they're in. And we might not have $100,000 of our own money invested in nonprofits, but we have much more than that in public monies and in public trust. And it's really our responsibility to watch out for that the same way we watch out over our own money in a company.
Let me ask you, do you come across some common misconceptions about financial responsibilities for board members?
Yeah, I speak to a lot of boards and work with a lot of organizations around finances, and I think people tend to be kind of on one extreme of the pendulum or another, and one is to be nervous about finances and feel that it's very intimidating and there's too many numbers and I'll never understand all this detail. And so it's easy to kind of rubber stamp things in that kind of situation. And I think the other misconception is I need to know everything. I need to be an expert in finance. I need to know every dollar of this budget. And in fact, it's really somewhere in between. Somebody on the board needs to know and be able to look at that. And the rest of the board needs to listen to those people.
Tell me a little bit about the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit, because certainly a lot of board members come from the for-profit world, and the statements may not look the same, and
Right.
sort of what they're looking at is a little different.
I think that there's some significant difference in finances, though, between nonprofits and for-profits. And one of them, of course, is that the bottom line is not actually profits, but a different world. So we put money into nonprofits, and what we want out of it is a changed world. And that's not actually anywhere on the financial statements.
That certainly is a challenge. And I think also the challenge, you were talking to me about the mission and the budget and the relationship between them. Can you explain that a little bit?
We like to say that the budget is really the strategic plan expressed in the language of dollars rather than expressed in the language of words. So I really think a neglected part of nonprofit board members' fiduciary responsibility is making sure that the programs and the money are connected to each other, that the priorities for program are reflected in priorities for money. I don't like it when people think of fiduciary responsibility as being a guard dog at the door of the Treasury and just trying to say no to everything. That's really not what it should be. It should be about making sure that monies are being used in the most effective way for the agency to accomplish what it's trying to do in the world.
By ensuring an organization has sufficient resources and by exercising careful stewardship, a board can more fully ensure the success of the mission. A well-supported mission, in turn, translates into outreach activities in the community the nonprofit serves. Let's take a look at the board's role in outreach.
It is the board's responsibility in the community to be the voice of the mission that the organization, I mean, this is my belief, not everybody believes this. And therefore, as a board member, they are in the best position to make connections with the other members of the community that ought to be appreciating the fact that this entity exists.
We're community-based, so we have a lot of participation from people. We're very close to the ground, so to speak, and oftentimes a good idea will emerge from a surprising sector of the enterprise.
I'm here because I see the connection between the work that occurs on this stage and an audience and the larger community, not only in this neighborhood, but the entire metropolitan area. And in our particular case, working in the Latino arts community is making a connection with the entire country, with other Latino organizations, that we can, in fact, work together.
Being connected to the larger community makes an organization stronger and able to survive change. Board members help make this connection in a number of ways. They recruit new board members, volunteers, and donors. They meet with elected officials and testify before legislatures. And they act as community ambassadors, expanding the circle of influence for the organization. For a closer look at the board's role in outreach, we visited with the Humanities Council of Washington, D.C.
Our mission here in Washington is to bring the humanities to people throughout the city, in every ward of the city, east of the river, and to really reach audiences that are not traditionally served by our cultural institutions. So outreach to us means reaching those audiences.
I mean, people talk about all the horrible things that are going on in Washington, and the Humanities Council goes out and shows all the good things that are going on in Washington.
Most of our programs are initiated by board members in the sense that they set a policy and a direction for how to achieve our mission. And so when we were talking about how do we reach out more into communities we're not serving, it was board members who said, let's do programming where people are.
Now I want you guys to imagine, and everybody knows what imagine means, right?
An active board does not mean to us a board involved in the day-to-day management of our operations. An active board to us means they are actively involved in the community as ambassadors for our work. Our new board chairman came up with a really, really wonderful idea and discussed it with other board members, and that is that board members could host humanities salons, which are informal evenings of discussion around any topic that the board member chooses in their home. They invite their friends and neighbors and colleagues, or they ask the staff for a list of prospects, donor prospects that maybe would like to be invited. I mean, it's a way of reaching out to people in the community, including potential donors. People will stay until 10, 11, and 12 o'clock talking about Washington history or Shakespeare. And they'll come away saying, now I really know what the Humanities Council is all about. We fund local neighborhood organizations to do public free humanities programs. And we do that through our City Lights program, which is a combination of books for kids and the Writers' Corps.
You want to show people that the board is as active as it possibly can so that you can lure other people in to give you a helping hand, give you money, give you books for kids, or to volunteer to read.
The Books for Kids program grew out of a board retreat where the board was committed to reaching new audiences for the humanities. An exciting part of Books for Kids is bringing in celebrity readers, political figures and sports figures and media people, and these celebrity readers include members of our board.
When I come to the Books for Kids program to read to the children, I'm just amazed at how many of them fill a little small room and they're hanging out of the room. And I just sit and read with them, and I try to bring them in to make them excited about what it is on these pages. Since then, I've wanted that bridge to be mine, because I think that if there's something magical that they might hear on the pages that will entice them to go home and open a book and see if there isn't something magical for them when they read it. And I'm hoping that through these pages, when these children hear whatever it is that I have to read, that it'll be exciting enough for them to want to say, yeah, maybe I can do that, or yeah, maybe I'd like to see that. And I can fly. Or maybe I'd like to write my own book and make it sound better than the one that she is reading about today. That would be nice.
By staying connected to the community, board members can ensure that organizations remain relevant and responsive. This brings us back to where we began, with the mission. In order to meet the needs of the communities we serve, we must fulfill certain responsibilities, both as individuals and as a whole. Understanding those responsibilities and how they intersect is our greatest challenge as board members and the key to continued success. Nonprofit board service is a way to give back to your community and make a meaningful contribution to a cause you believe in. It can be a rewarding and challenging opportunity, but equipped with the right information, this is a challenge we're sure you can meet.